Episode 189. The only thing that caught Han Li's attention was an old man and a young person seated together in a corner of the hall. The elder was a man in his 60s, clad in a blue robe with graying hair, calmly savoring the tea in his hand as if utterly unconcerned with the immortal fate before him. The younger one, a fair-skinned youth with delicate features, occasionally shot a disdainful glance in immortal Master Wu's direction.
These two are also cultivators, and their cultivation isn't bad. The old man in the blue robe has reached the 9th layer of the technique, and this youth is at the 5th layer, not inferior to that immortal Wu at all. It's just that I can't tell what cultivation art those two are using. They've managed to conceal their spiritual qi so thoroughly it's barely there. If my cultivation base weren't so much higher than theirs, I'd never have spotted them as cultivators. As for that Master Wu, he naturally had even less ability to detect anything unusual about those two.
A method that could conceal one's spiritual qi from cultivators of the same rank, Han Li's interest was immediately piqued.
If I could learn this technique, wouldn't I have a huge advantage in fights against cultivators of the same rank?
Thinking this, Han Li took another careful look at the two of them, and this time he noticed something off. The fair-skinned boy had 2 tiny holes in his earlobes. So this was a young woman after all. Han Li was a bit taken aback, but the young man happened to glance his way. Flushing, he shot him a fierce glare in return. The girl's cross-dressing immediately caught the old man's attention. He furrowed his brow, then turned back to cast a flat, expressionless glance at Han Li. Seeing this, Han Li gave the old man a smile that caught the blue-robed elder completely off guard. He had assumed it was some pampered young master who had seen through his daughter's disguise and was teasing her with his gaze. But instead, it was a completely unremarkable-looking young man, one who showed not a trace of fear toward him. The old man in the green robe felt a flicker of irritation. After a moment's deliberation, he gently closed his eyes. This gesture caught Han Li off guard.
Could it be that he intends to?
When the old man opened his eyes again, a strange purple light flickered in his gaze as he looked at Han Li. It seemed he was trying some kind of mind-altering spell, hoping to embarrass him on the spot and teach him a small lesson. Han Li found this sight rather amusing.
With his mere qi condensation layer 9 cultivation, he actually tried to cast a mind confusion spell on me, a foundation establishment mid-stage cultivator. Isn't that just asking for death? If I were to counter with even a sliver of my magic power, he'd be hit by the backlash for sure. But since I'm after his qi refinement technique, I can't afford to make an enemy of him.
So Han Li simply met the old man's gaze with a faint smile, his expression utterly unruffled. The green-robed elder's smirk slowly twisted into bewilderment, then into stark alarm. The old man silently cursed his luck. He tried to look away, but it was already too late. Han Li's gaze had already begun to glow with a faint yellow light, pulling at the old man's eyes like a magnet, leaving him unable to look away.
I never would have guessed that this youth, who appeared to have no magic power at all, was actually a cultivator, and one whose cultivation far surpasses my own. If I had known this would happen, I never would have used the nightmare art on him. Now my mind is completely under his control. I can never break free from his countermeasure.
The more the old man thought about it, the more terrified he became. In an instant, sweat the size of soybeans poured down his forehead. His face turned ashen, yet his eyes remained fixed on Han Li. The young woman in men's clothing finally noticed something was wrong with her elder. In a panic, she tugged at his sleeve. Unexpectedly, after being spun half a turn, the gray-robed elder effortlessly broke free from Han Li's gaze and was rescued from the backlash of the nightmare art. The old man in the green robe had gone from death's door to freedom in an instant. The sheer emotional whiplash left him stunned for a moment before he finally snapped back to his senses. The back of his robe was now completely soaked through with cold sweat. He exchanged a few hushed words with the young woman, then didn't dare so much as glance in Han Li's direction again. The old man in the green robe understood clearly. The girl had only freed him so easily because she had held back. Otherwise, at the very least, his mind would have been damaged and he would have fallen gravely ill.
I don't know why he did that, but my grandson and I should leave this man's presence as soon as possible. This young man with the ordinary face, his cultivation is terrifying. We can't afford to provoke him. I clearly used the Heaven's Eye technique to check him, and there wasn't a trace of magic power fluctuation on him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been so reckless as to use the nightmare art. Could this man's cultivation have already reached?
The old man in the green robe paled as the thought took hold.
If it really is as I suspect, have I gone and provoked another big shot whose entire clan can't handle?
The old man, whose mind had just begun to settle, found his peace shattered once more. The young woman in men's clothing stared, astonished, at the old man's shifting complexion, a mottled flush of red and green.
In all my memory, grandfather has always been unflappable, steady as a mountain. Yet now he shows such an expression. Could that ordinary young man truly be so terrifying?
At that thought, she couldn't help but feel the urge to glance back at Han Li. But before he could act, the old man spoke up to stop him.
Don't provoke that young man anymore. If I'm not mistaken, he's very likely a Foundation establishment cultivator.
What? A Foundation establishment cultivator? That can't be right. How old could he even be?
The girl's face went pale. The girl's face was a mask of disbelief, yet she knew her grandfather would never speak idly. Shaken to the core, she had no choice but to endure, forcing herself not to look back at Han Li. Han Li had taught the other a small lesson but hadn't actually hurt him, and he was quite satisfied with that. At that moment, his lips moved slightly as he sent a telepathic message. Suddenly, Han Li's voice rang out in the old man's ear.
Once we're out of the new prince's mansion, don't rush off. Wait for me at the back gate. I have something to ask you.
Han Li's voice made the old man freeze, his heart silently groaning in dismay.
Could it be that this exalted one still won't let my granddaughter and me go? Or does he have some other motive? Still, he doesn't seem the ruthless type, and if we can forge a connection with a Foundation establishment cultivator, it might just be the rare opportunity our family needs to rise again.
The old man in the green robe could only console himself with such thoughts. At this moment, his heart was in turmoil, an agonizing torment. Han Li smiled faintly at this, then turned his attention back to Master Wu. By now, this immortal Wu had already examined most of the crowd, yet he still hadn't found a single person with spiritual aptitude. Those young people declared to have no spiritual affinity could only return to their seats, crestfallen. Their elders weren't exactly thrilled either.
Spirit root? More like they're just looking for people with spirit roots. But this old Taoist isn't just a charlatan. He genuinely wants to take on disciples here. Otherwise, he could have just pointed at a few people at random, right?
Han Li watched the old man cheerfully checking each young person's spirit root and figured he probably didn't have much hope of taking on a disciple here.
This child has spiritual affinity. I can take him as my disciple.
Han Li froze at those words, then turned to look at the so-called fated one. A plump, fair-skinned young man stood blankly before this Master Wu, completely at a loss. Beside him, a portly middle-aged man in purple silk robes pressed forward, his voice thick with disbelief.
Immortal Master, does my boy really have the gift of immortality? Are you sure there's no mistake?
The man who had truly been hit by a giant pie was, indeed, finding it hard to believe. None of those other talented young men had been chosen, yet his own lazy, good-for-nothing son had caught the immortal master's eye at a single glance. It truly felt like a dream.
Rest assured, benefactor, I have checked several times. Your son truly possesses a spiritual root and can study immortal arts alongside the young prince.
At this, Immortal Wu smoothed his snow-white beard.
Thank you, Immortal Master. Thank you. I may not be wealthy, but my family has a few acres of land. Tomorrow, I'll prepare a generous apprenticeship gift for you. Son, hurry up and kowtow to the Immortal Master as your teacher.
The middle-aged man, now certain of the matter, began dancing for joy, his words tumbling out in a jumbled mess. The rejected youths were all left dumbfounded.
That immortal seed Immortal Wu picked out. Isn't that the fatso we always call a good-for-nothing glutton? A waste like him has a spirit root. That's just too hard to swallow.
It wasn't just the younger ones who thought so. Even their elders exchanged uneasy glances, finding it hard to accept. Han Li's expression betrayed nothing.
Whether a person possesses a spirit root has nothing to do with how handsome or pretty they are, nor does it have any connection to their intelligence or ability. There's no pattern to it. Otherwise, before the cultivation families emerged, the sects wouldn't have had such a hard time finding worthy disciples.
Still, Han Li was a bit surprised that among so few people, they'd actually find someone with a spirit root.
Looks like this Taoist is pretty lucky.
Han Li and the grandfather-granddaughter pair understood this well enough, but the others in the hall did not. They began to whisper among themselves.
How is that possible?
Some of the sharper ones even started to wonder if this Immortal Wu was the real deal. This made those who hadn't tested yet hesitate, reluctant to step forward. And so, for a moment, the old Taoist found himself facing an awkward silence. The new king looked displeased, but since everyone present were old friends of his, he couldn't say anything outright. Instead, he turned to the old Taoist and offered a tactful suggestion.
Immortal Wu, we're all just ordinary folk here. Hardly any of us have ever seen real immortal arts. Why don't you show us a trick? Let us broaden our horizons.
At the new king's words, the crowd fell silent at once, all eyes turning to the old immortal master. The white-haired old Taoist pondered for a moment, then agreed quite readily and told everyone to follow him to the open space in front of the hall. With the old Taoist's word, the crowd in the hall surged out all at once. Han Li, indifferent as ever, followed them out. As for the grandfather and granddaughter, they showed no sign of moving, still fretting over Han Li's request to meet,